start with this. Well, it appears that Adrian Broner done got in some shit. Yet again. Adrian Broner appears to have been banned from Uber after going berserk on a driver. And there's video footage that corroborates this, that Adrian Broner, he was acting a fool in the car, him and his entourage, and the Uber driver, he'd finally had enough of that shit, and he kicked him the fuck out, Broner and his entourage.
The fuck?
And, like, with all things when it comes to Adrian Broner, you gonna have a couple of motherfuckers that try to explain that shit away. You gonna have a couple of guys that they actually identify with this asshole.
Wow.
So every time he does something stupid, they rush to his defense, when the only reason they're doing that is because Broner mirrors who they are. You know, Broner's a fuckboy, and you're a fuckboy, so naturally you're going to defend him. Birds of a feather flock together. Whereas what I see in Adrian Broner is the same shit I've always seen. A guy who can't decide whether or not he wants to be a world-class athlete or a world-class asshole. Now, plenty of people would argue that these days, he's more the latter than the former. That all he is these days is a world-class asshole that everybody knows. Because in terms of being a world-class athlete, that's what he's not. You know, a lot of people saw that Vargas fight, and I know a lot of people that feel, you know what, Vargas isn't a big puncher, and maybe he didn't land the harder punches in the fight, but he gave a more consistent enough effort, and he should have been the one that got the W. They called it a draw. My interpretation of that is they're keeping Broner around because they know he's a marquee fighter. Maybe he's not a fan favorite, but he's popular enough that he's still relevant, and they want to give that guy a lifeline. They want to keep him around. But back to the point. The behavior of Adrian Broner.
Chris.
Up that shit, bro.
Can we turn it up a little bit?
Go back, bro.
I went back.
Go back. Ah!
Back in high school, I used to bust it to the dance. Now I hit the FBO with duffels in my hands. I did half a Zen, 13 hours till I land. Have it out like a light, hey, like a light, like a light.
Hey, what is that?
I have to leave my vehicle.
We gotta go a little bit further.
I'm sorry, no.
What?
I can't.
Man, what you making me straight?
What? This guy's too old for this kind of shit. I mean, what are you, 16 years old? You're fucking around in the cab or the Uber or whatever? Like, how old is this guy? This is somebody's father, you know. This guy's got a lot of fucking kids. This is somebody's parent.
What the fuck?
And you see the way that this guy behaves, and he behaves like a 16-year-old. He behaves like a little boy. Goes back to what I always say about the guy. He's a fucking man-child.
Basics!
Some people look at all the shit that Adrian Broner does, and they find it amusing. They find it entertaining. Me personally, I don't. I just think he's a fucking asshole. An asshole, a douchebag, piece of shit. That's what I think Adrian Broner is, quite honestly, and his behavior, time and time again, exhibits that.
Honestly.
So, in his latest episode of What Else Can I Do to Make People Think I'm Retarded, he's managed to get himself banned from using Uber. Congratulations. What I'm wondering is, a guy who says that he's about billions, what's a guy who says he's about billions riding around in a fucking Uber? I don't understand that. You about billions. You should be jettisoning everywhere, but you're in a fucking Uber like the rest of us, and you're about billions? That's funny. I vaguely recall that Eddie Hearn offered this guy a $3 million a fight deal for 3 fights a year. And it was AB that said, well, no, that's a slave deal. Fuck that shit. Slave deal? Well, whatever deal you got going on right now has you riding around in Uber cabs. So whatever deal you got going on can't be much better than what Eddie Hearn offered you. But that's more the same shit from Adrian Broner, man. It's more the same shit. I said it before, I'ma say it again. This is somebody's father, you know. This is somebody's parent. And you look at this guy and you think, this guy needs a fucking parent. This guy needs fucking parental guidance. Except he's a grown fucking man. He's a grown-up. You an adult. When is Adrian Broner gonna start acting like a fucking adult?
Never.
And in other news, one of Adrian Broner's closest associates, one of his peers, Gervonta Davis appears to have gotten himself arrested in what is, get this, a fist fight in D.C. Now, understand this shit. This is the same Gervonta Davis that was at a loss for words when Tevin Farmer challenged him to have a unification fight.
Remember that?
A unification fight that would make them millions. Yet this little motherfucking genius, I guess he'd rather just fight for free in Washington, D.C. and get arrested thereafter.
Fucking dumb is this guy?
Now, I think what we're looking at here is more of that
Adrian Broner.
mentoring that he's been receiving since becoming bosom buddies with Adrian Broner. That's what I think this is. I mean, Gervonta Davis some time ago seemed like a kid that had a bright future, a kid that's on the right track, a kid who could become a pound-for-pound star. But all he looks like now is an updated version of Adrian Broner. He's the new and improved Adrian Broner. Fucks up twice as fast with less than half the accomplishments. That's what it's looking like. They asked this kid to fight Vasyl Lomachenko? Nah. They asked this kid to fight Tevin Farmer? Nah. But he could get in a fist fight at a fucking party for free, not make any millions of dollars, and get arrested in the process. These are all genius level ideas. People wonder, why is it that so many guys are hard on Adrian Broner? Why is it that so many guys are hard on Gervonta Davis? Well, it's because of stupid shit like this. This is stupid. Don't pull out a violin. Don't tell me a sob story. Don't give me your interpretation of it. We see what's going on here. These are two professional fighters that act like professional idiots. That's the only way you can describe their behavior. But you know what? We giving enough of these motherfucking Uber, pun intended. We giving these Uber celebrities enough attention. Let's talk about the real fighters and the real fights that are coming up. It appears that the intended rematch between Sergey Kovalev and the new WBO champion Eleider Alvarez, it appears that their rematch has found a home, and that home is going to be on ESPN. The news broke via the Instagram accounts of Main Events, the Instagram accounts of Top Rank Boxing, that the fight will be aired on ESPN early next year, 2019. And this is a part of the reason why, when they said that HBO had declined to air the fight, I wasn't concerned with the network shit, because I figured that as long as these two guys intend to fight each other, the fight will find a home, they'll shop the fight around, somebody will pick it up, somebody will show it, and we'll be able to watch it. That's why I didn't spend too much time or spend too many videos talking about that whole network ordeal, because I knew that shit will get resolved. And the only thing that really needs resolution in regards to this fight isn't so much the network stuff, but how the fans feel as far as Sergey Kovalev's odds to become a champion yet again. Sergey Kovalev does not seem like a bankable fighter to me anymore. Thus, I don't even know if I want to pick a pony in this show. On one hand, it could end up being like the James DeGale situation between him and Caleb Truax, where you know that James DeGale, he's on the slide, he's in decline, he's seen better days, and it's starting to show. As a result of that, he lost the first fight. But he did turn around and win the rematch. He did get his world title back. So there is a possibility that it could be a situation like that between Sergey and Eleider. It could be that way. But on the other end of that spectrum, it could just be that, you know what? Sergey's days as an elite fighter, Sergey's days as a champion, maybe they are over. Maybe they are. Maybe it's too late for him to try to turn things around. It could be that way too. But the feeling that I've got, the feeling that requires resolution, is I'm ambivalent. I can't tell you who I really think is going to win this fight. I can't tell you. Right now, I'm leaning towards Alvarez because of a rule of thumb. A little universal principle that is more often than not the case. And that principle is that 9 times out of 10, the guy who wins the first fight tends, not always, but usually, the guy that wins the first fight tends to win the rematch in better fashion. I'm not telling you that's always the case, but more often than not, it is. And when we look at Sergey Kovalev, you guys have to ask yourselves a question.
What's that?
Do you believe that he can become a champion again? Do you believe he can beat Eleider Alvarez in the rematch? And if you do believe that, how much money would you be willing to bet on it? Because based on how much money you're willing to bet, that's what tells us whether or not you actually believe that shit. Do you trust Sergey Kovalev with your money at this stage in his career? We all know what fighter he used to be. We all know what kind of fighter he was. But he's clearly not that guy anymore. So the question now is, ahead of this rematch, do you trust him to win the rematch? We'll talk more about this as the fight date approaches. In other news that broke earlier today, it appears that the fight between Alexander Usyk, undisputed cruiserweight champion Alexander Usyk, and Tony Bellew, former champion in the weight class, their fight has been finalized. They've got a date, they've got a venue, and all systems are a go. Now, it being that the fight itself is being billed as an undisputed Cruiserweight Championship, meaning that all the belts are on the line. The WBC, the WBO, the IBF, the Ring Magazine, and the WBA. It being that it's billed as an undisputed fight, we can make the inference that Alexander Usyk has effectively circumvented his mandatory, that mandatory being Denis Lebedev. Denis Lebedev, who the WBA ordered Alexander Usyk to fight. We can make the inference that since the fight is being billed as a fight for all the belts, they have negotiated a situation to where the fight can go down between Usyk and Bellew, and Usyk won't get stripped of the WBA title. Maybe they've paid Denis Lebedev some step-aside money.
Maybe.
Or maybe Denis doesn't want it right now. Who fucking knows? Maybe he had a change of heart.
Maybe.
Who fucking knows? Maybe they've negotiated a situation where he'll be fighting on the undercard. The news just broke, so there are some particulars that we're not currently aware of. But what we are aware of is that the fight is being billed as an undisputed Cruiserweight Championship, and that means that all the belts are going to be on the line. Eddie Hearn has managed to put together yet another intriguing fight in what is hopefully overall another intriguing card. Eddie Hearn's been hard at work negotiating these significant situations, and this is probably the most significant fight in the Cruiserweight division, it being that all the belts are on the line. This is for all the marbles, and Tony Bellew, say what you want. You know, you can have your personal feelings about the guy. I understand. But at the end of the day, this is a guy that has beaten the odds before.
That's true.
You know, very recently at that. Not once, but twice. So that adds a bit of intrigue to the matchup. You can feel, you know, you can argue that you might favor Usyk to win. You can argue that. I mean, I do. I favor Usyk to win the fight too. But the intriguing part of the fight is you can't necessarily act like it's a foregone conclusion, because Tony Bellew has dispelled some foregone conclusions, more recently with David Haye. That's what adds the intrigue to the fight, that you know that Tony Bellew is an upper echelon fighter. He is a world-level cruiserweight who has squared off against world-level cruiserweights, other opponents in general. Tony Bellew is a skilled fighter, and he can fight from a wider variety of ranges than Usyk's last opponent, Murat Gassiev, who's really got to get, you know, inside to do any business. Tony can fight you on the inside, but he can also fight you on the outside. He's got a better set of legs than Gassiev had. So he's a guy who's got his virtues. At minimum, what you can say is that Tony Bellew
is skilled.
He's got some ingredients to make this an interesting fight. Now, the fight's supposed to be going down on November 10th at the Manchester Arena. It's going to be shown in Sky Sports, on Sky Sports, for the people over there in the UK. And here in America, the fight will be streamed live on DAZN. So that gives you yet another reason to go ahead and get that app. It appears that DAZN's maiden voyage here in America, they're trying to kick off that maiden voyage with a bang, because you really got to look at how many cards they've got lined up from now, you know, here in September, all the way to November. You've got the Anthony Joshua fight with Povetkin later on this month. You've got about 2 other cards, I believe they're in October, one being on October 6th. You've got those cards, and now you've got the Usyk versus Bellew fight in November, what is arguably the most significant, the most important fight in that weight class, between 2 of the best guys in that weight class. All things considered, you'll excuse me for saying that I think that Eddie Hearn is doing a very good job. A damn good job.